Hey everyone, welcome. It's Saturday, October 12th, I believe. I have the one and only Vikings boss in the house to recap our first quarter of the season and plus or minus, and talk about Sunday's game. That's going to be tomorrow's game. That's going to be a good, important game for us. Vikings boss, welcome again.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. You must have enjoyed the first one because you're here again.
Well, I was hoping that we would be able to do this after the Bears game. As you mentioned, my father has had some health difficulties this week, so I apologize to everyone that we're a week late, but it's still good to talk about the Viking season thus far. So, all in all, I think it should be a good experience.
Great. And my prayers go to you and your dad. I hope for a speedy recovery. As we were talking before the show, we have a great health care system, so these doctors are pretty amazing when they, are put to the test. But yeah, let's move on to our beloved Vikings. What are your thoughts? First quarter, I want to say that I am pretty pleased, and I'll explain why. I think we could have won the Packers game.
I think we should have won the Packers game.
One bad play away from maybe stealing that one. And in the Chicago game, we only gave up 16 points. So that's not too bad. The offense just struggled. And remember that when we hurt Trubisky, but there was a penalty, and so they kept the ball. If we didn't get that penalty and we had the ball, could it have been different? What are your thoughts?
I think it would have been different. It's hard to say, obviously. We had the same type of situation happen against the Giants this past week. We had them going out 3-and-out on their first series, and there was another penalty on Harris. Same type of ticky-tack call, in my opinion, for illegal contact that extended their drive, and that just shows that if you give a good team like the Bears a second chance, they can hurt you. If you give a bad team a second chance, like you give New York a second chance, you got a little bit of leeway there, but you can't make that type of mistake against a team like Chicago. Apparently, even with their second-string quarterback out there.
Yeah, that was a tough one to accept. Where I thought when Trubisky went down, we were golden, but not the case.
I actually had the exact opposite feeling, that having Trubisky out of the game gave Chicago a better chance. Because I think Mitch Trubisky is awful.
Okay.
I agree with everyone who calls him Mitchell Ponder. I think they're the same guy, and I think Chicago's forever going to be giving us the reward that they didn't draft Pat Mahomes in the draft.
Okay. Ponder's name keeps coming back in a negative way. He's just never going to be a beloved Viking.
I liked the guy. I was a defender of his for probably longer than I should have been, but I have seen the light. I realized that Christian Ponder was probably, if not the worst quarterback in Vikings history. I don't think anyone can match Spurgeon Wynn or Tavares Jackson for just downright pedestrian play. But, when you draft a guy, 12th overall, you got to get more out of him.
Yeah. That was a huge surprise. I can remember it like it was yesterday. The announcers, like, what? Ponder, he came out of nowhere, and yeah, him and Tavares Jackson, I would put them in the same category as not what we were looking for, to put it nicely.
Yeah, but even Tavares was the last pick in the second round. So realistically, you shouldn't be drafting your quarterback of the future with the last pick in the second round. It should be a guy that you're getting in the first round. or middle of the second, early second. I mean, Drew Brees was an early second-round pick by San Diego. When you start picking out those guys at the bottom of the barrel, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And, as far as embodied that.
True.
What we're looking for.
Except when I think about that, I think of Tom Brady, and he was a 6th or 7th round pick. And so my thought is you're always trying to bring in a quarterback back that could potentially be something. And you got to give.
I would say that you should draft a quarterback every year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. The
guy in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. Because, yes, Tom Brady was the 199th overall pick. And I believe 6 quarterbacks were taken in front of him. And the only one two, Chad Pennington and Mark Bulger, had success on some scale. But, yeah, you got to keep bringing somebody in to keep taking a shot at it. And
yeah, I think so.
Even if you have a Kyle Sloter on your roster, it's worth bringing in a Jake Browning to see what they have.
Did you say Sloter? Because I wanted to give him a chance, just a chance, but I don't know, because that new quarterback for Jacksonville, what's his name, Minshew or whatever. Minshew, he came out of nowhere, and he's becoming like a star, and I was hoping Sloter would develop into something like that, like all of a sudden he's like the guy, and everyone's excited, but not going to be. So
I don't think that's going to happen in Arizona either.
Yeah, well, time will tell. So let's talk about why are we so inconsistent? We Atlanta, we look great. Oakland, we blew them out. Giants, we look good. What's going on? Why can't we be consistent?
I don't know. It is the very definition of up and down. Win, loss, win, loss, win. If I had the answer to why Kirk Cousins can't keep his head straight against good teams, I would probably be a lot richer than I am now, because NFL teams, particularly the Vikings, would probably be asking for my advice. But no, I can't figure out what happens to Cousins when we play solid foes on the road. And of course, it's not a new problem, as everyone who follows this podcast, I'm sure, realizes. I mean, Seattle last year on the road, New England on the road, Chicago on the road. The only road games last year where he performed up to the standards of his contract were Philadelphia, which we won, and Los Angeles, where he threw for 400 some yards and 3 touchdowns. That should be enough to win you any game. But when your defense gives up a perfect passer rating to a quarterback who threw the ball, I think, 30 times. Jared Goff set a record for most pass attempts in a perfect passer rating game. That's probably not going to be a formula for winning no matter what your quarterback does, and that game kind of proved it. But even so, we did have a chance to win, or at least tie on that final drive, and he still fumbled the ball away.
I remember that. And he looked good against the Packers in the second half last year as well.
Yes, away.
He really did. That was the game that everyone was like, wait a minute, I think we have something here, because, he came back, he threw that long bomb to Diggs, and then that unbelievable throw to Thielen and catch.
Yep.
And
that would have been, everybody talks about how he never has a game-winning drive, never had a game-winning drive. He had 3 in that game, or 2. We missed a field goal in at the end of regulation. We missed a field goal in overtime. So, saying that Kirk Cousins can't get it done in clutch situations, obviously we saw against Green Bay that he can do that, and Washington fans saw in the "you like that" game that he can take a team back. He can beat clutch, but he can't be that on a consistent basis. And that's been the storyline his entire career, and it continues to plague us here in Minnesota now.
And I'm wondering if it's because he seems to be thinking ahead of where he is, and I'll explain. He's doing podcasts. Shouldn't he just be focused on being a quarterback? And Zimmer said something about that. Like, why is he doing that? I think that might be part of the reason. He's already thinking about his second career instead of the career that he has now.
I disagree.
Oh, you do?
Many quarterbacks, star players on many teams have radio shows during the week, and he devotes an hour every Tuesday night to going on the radio here in the Twin Cities, and yes, it is podcastable afterwards, with Mark Rosen to just have a TV show or a radio show. Lots of quarterbacks, lots of coaches have that type of thing in their contracts, in their work to, maybe it is preparing for a future career, but I don't think Kirk Cousins' podcast radio show is what is causing him to struggle on the field. When you talk about thinking too much or thinking ahead, I think that is his problem, that he thinks too much and gets too much in his head. He doesn't just go out there and play. And, you hear so many people talk about being in the zone, or, they forget about the crowd when they're out there. They just play. They don't think about anything. They just go out there and they react because that's what they've been doing their entire football careers. And I don't know if Kirk Cousins had that. I have to admit, I didn't watch Kirk Cousins a lot when he was at Michigan State. I didn't watch him much when he was with the Redskins. I saw what probably most people see, 2 or 3 games a year. And he always looked pretty good. I obviously saw him when he played the Vikings. But I don't know if he's always been this kind of mechanical, must think ahead, must not react, must just can't take it as it comes type of guy. But that's what strikes me about him, is that he doesn't seem to just be a read and react type guy. He seems to be very methodical, and when things don't go according to the plan, he can't compensate for that.
Well, I do watch his, I guess his, when the reporters ask him questions, and he's a very bright guy, and I love the way he answers questions. But he does, to me, seem like he's already thinking about a career after being a quarterback, and if I'm an owner and I'm paying a guy $84 million guarantee, I'm like, hey, focus on being a quarterback, and get us a Super Bowl, and then you can do all the shows you want, but that's just me. I tend to try to look at everything, and it's like the little things that make all the difference in the world sometimes, and he's got the talent. I don't necessarily like his throwing motion, and I mentioned that in one of my podcasts. But he can get it done, and we have the team. We have the running game now. We've always had receivers, and now with number 84, the new tight end, I think he looks great. Get him more involved. I don't know why Rudolph isn't more involved. What's that?
The whole passing game needs to be more involved. I got it right here. Through 5 games, 126 passing attempts. That's fine if that's what Zimmer wants to do. Just have this methodical pound the ball with Cook, pound the ball with Madison, 40 times a game. We can obviously have some success with that, as we've seen. We've destroyed Atlanta, we destroyed Oakland, and we destroyed the Giants, outside of the red zone at least. So we know that approach can have some success, but to beat the teams that are coming up on our schedules, teams with explosive offenses like Kansas City, Dallas, we're going to have to be able to throw the ball with more efficiency than we have now, and probably just with more volume than we are now. We spoke about beating Philadelphia last year on the road. Kirk Cousins dropped back to pass 41 times in that game. 300 yards and a touchdown. And the Vikings won. We need that type of performance at least a few times against some of the teams that we're going to play. I would like to see him throw the ball about 35 times a game. 35 passes, 30 rushes. I don't see why, if things are going right, that shouldn't be the recipe for success. Like last week, we came out and we threw early 4 or 5 passes on that first drive. And then you relied on, what was the first touchdown? The deep pass to Thielen. That actually came on the second drive. The first drive ended in a field goal. And congratulations to Dan Bailey for the first time in 5 years making the Purple Pain game day thread not completely about our kicker missing a field goal.
Yeah.
But, you got to come out sometimes and use the pass to set up the run. The old saying was you always run to set up the pass, run to set up the pass. I think the Vikings have to do kind of exactly the opposite. Get ahead with the pass, use the run to salt the game away. I think that's what Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison can do. But use the pass to set that up. I don't necessarily... Sorry, I got a fruit fly or something.
No, I see it. But here's what I think, and I don't know if you ever watch golf, and if you've ever played golf, but you go to the course and you have to go with what you have. Sometimes you can hit a draw, and I'm not a professional, but sometimes you can hit a fade, and I was listening to Tiger Woods. He says, sometimes I just have to go with what I have. And I think with this team, and probably any team, and especially this team, at this point, we have to go with what we have for that game. If the running game is working like it did in that first game where we threw the ball 10 times, but we won big, that's what we go with, And, the Chicago game, we had to, we really nothing was working. We couldn't run, we couldn't pass. But, if we're not running, then, yeah, we got to throw the ball and make that work. But you got to go with what you have. And every game is different. I don't think you can go in and say, okay, I'm going to run first and then pass off of the run, or vice versa. I think you got to have a feel for, like Bud Grant was the best at doing that. Looking at his players, looking at the team, and determining where they were mentally and then deciding what route should we take. So I think you got to go with what you have.
I think I disagree with you a little bit. The golf analogy, the course is always going to be the same. So you're not always playing the same course, but at least for those 4 rounds, you're playing the same course. The course isn't going to change to fit your style of play. But in football, I've always been a proponent of not letting your opponent, at least on offense, defense is a different story, but offense, you don't let what your opponent wants to do dictate what you're going to do. So you come out and you dictate to your opponent. If you want to throw the ball 50 times, throw the ball 50 times. If you want to run the ball the first 20 plays of the game to guarantee that you win, as Rain Man always says, obviously if you're going to win if you run the ball 20 times, just run the ball the first 20 plays. That's what the Vikings should do. Just run the ball the first 20 plays, and they'll be guaranteed to win because they're 19-2 in the Zimmer era when they run the ball more than 20 times. No, you dictate to the opponent what you're going to do on offense and force them to stop you. So if that means that you want to pass 10 times to set up the run, do that. If you want to come out and run 5 times, do that. Adjustments can be made throughout the game if what you're doing absolutely will not work. But you don't let the defense dictate to you. And that's my opinion on the matter. That may be different than Bud Grant, but...
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I just think that when you start a game, if Cousins isn't on, if receivers are dropping balls, if they're not clicking, you know what I mean? You got to do something different, Like I've always liked Pittsburgh back in the day. When they couldn't run or pass, they would start doing reverses, little gadget plays to get the momentum back, you know what I mean? And so you never know who you're bringing to the dance. And if it's not working, you got to find a way to, get it back and get some momentum is what I'm trying to say. And
well, but like you said, you have to play with what you have. If you know that Kirk Cousins is the type of guy who needs a few passes to get into rhythm, which it certainly appears that he is, let him get into that rhythm early. Don't wait until after you've gone out there on 2 or 3 drives and handed the ball to Cook 13 times and let Cousins throw just 5 times. Let him get out into a rhythm if you feel that's what he needs.
Okay, listen, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. Philadelphia's game, Sunday. Yeah. How would you start that game, knowing what you know about Philly, knowing what you know about our team? Give me your first few plays of that game. We have the ball. They're kicking to us. 1st and 10 on the 25. What do you do?
1st and 10 on the 25. I actually, and I've heard this discussed several times throughout radio shows here in the Twin Cities this past week, I start in the pistol. Cousins 3 steps behind Bradbury. Cook a few steps behind him. Just because Bradbury or Brett Jones, if Bradbury is too hurt to end up going, he's been on the injury report this week. Don't let them be dominated by Fletcher Cox. I say don't let the defense dictate what you do, but taking a precaution to make sure that they can't dictate what you do is a different story. 1st and 10 from the 25, I come out in the pistol, and I look for a swing pass to Cook. I want to get him involved. He is our team's leading receiver with 21 catches through 5 games. So I look for a swing pass, something short, quick, get him out in space so he can make a play, even if it's only a 4 or 5 yard gain, 6 or 7. But he has the ability with those short passes to turn it into a 20-yard gain very easily. So I would look for that. But I would probably go 3 or 4 pass plays in a row to start off the game. Something short and breaking out to take advantage of Diggs' route running ability. Get him involved. And maybe have Thielen going deep, looking for a shot. I do want to get both Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph more involved in the passing game. I'm sick of seeing tight end screens to Kyle Rudolph. I would rather see those to Irv Smith if it has to stay a part of the offense. But I want to see both of them get involved, and I'm glad that we're seeing more of B.C. Johnson the past few weeks. I mean, he's played considerably more snaps against Chicago and New York than he did early in the season, and he's produced 8 catches. I think 8 catches out of 9 targets. So there might be something there as well. And that's what I would do, is I would lean on the passing game early, particularly against Eagles secondary that is very beat up. They're going to be starting cast-off Viking Greg James and trying to line him up against Adam Thielen or Stephon Diggs. They should be able to eat him alive.
Oh, I can't.
So I think the key to this week's game will be getting the passing game up and going early. And then as you get into the second and third quarter, start pounding him with that running game, and I think Cook will have success.
I couldn't disagree with you more on that. Our running attack is averaging, 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. I would run right off the bat and get 4, 5, 6 yards. So now I'm looking at 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5 is okay, and then start throwing the ball. I want to establish Mike Tice. He had this great. He was a great offensive line coach. You probably didn't like him as a head coach, but he was a great offensive line coach.
I like him as head coach.
And what he said was, when a guy is 300 plus, pounds, he's not 300 pounds when he's going backwards. He's 300 pounds when he's going forward. And I would start my guys, running the ball, offensive line, pounding the guys, setting the tone. I'm not afraid of Cox. We can get Cox, you know what I mean? So run first, establish that physicality, and then start throwing the ball, because our running game right now is just so strong. We got to, lean on that. Our passing game is not as strong as our running game is right now. No doubt about it in my mind. So that's what I would do. And that's what happened last year against the Bears, the last game. I almost started crying because they started throwing the first 3, plays of that game. I'm like, what are we doing? Run the ball. Kirk clearly isn't the quarterback that, we want him to be yet. He's so I'm running the ball anyway, so that's my thought.
Well, Philadelphia, though, has the number 1 ranked run defense in the NFL.
So
They're allowing only 3 yards a carry, and 1 out of every 3 plays, rushing plays, they are stopping for 0 or negative yards. So if you start off with a run and you're all of a sudden in 2nd and 12, now you're in a passing situation anyway.
I would still run it.
A first pass can end up being incomplete. A first pass, particularly if it's a short swing pass to Cook, can end up being a negligible gain, but at the very least it's a gain, and it starts building up Cousins' confidence. And I really think that the weakest part of the Eagles' defense is their secondary. So like I said, you don't let them dictate to you. If their secondary is weak, attack their secondary.
Pound the beef. Pound the beef. Pound the beef.
You and I are just going to disagree.
Yeah, no, pound the beef. I mean, our running game looked good in preseason. It certainly looked good, early part of the season, minus the Bears game. I got to give you that. I am saying to the Eagles, we're coming.
The Eagles defense
we're coming.
Is comparable to the Bears defense in what they do well.
Not at US Bank Stadium. Not at US Bank Stadium. We're going to run it. We are going to run it. We're going to run it hard. Mark my words.
See. I personally would like to see him pass the ball. I would like to see Irv Smith running down the seam matched up against Andrew Sendejo. And I love Andrew Sendejo. Andrew Sendejo and I...
Yeah, I liked him too.
He and I went to the same school.
Really?
Yes. He went to Rice, I went to Rice. I love Andrew Sendejo.
Okay, good.
But he can't cover Irv Smith. He can't really cover anybody.
Yeah, he can hit, but he can't cover.
He's a run thumper in the box safety. But if we can expose him in the passing game, if we can expose Craig James in the passing game, I can't even remember the name of the guy who the Eagles had lined up against Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams chewed him up and spit him out. There is no reason that Stephon Diggs should not be able to do the same thing. I'm not a huge fan of rewarding bad behavior, and I think that Stephon Diggs the past few weeks has exemplified bad behavior. But this is a week where he should end the game happy with 13 or 14 targets and giving him a chance to do what he does well, which is giving him the ball and letting him get out and make plays after he's caught the ball.
Okay.
I think he's very good at that. let him catch the pass on a crossing pass and run. He and Thielen are both outstanding at that, using that great route running ability that they both have to create space and use that space after they've made the catch. I just think that this is a perfect opportunity to get your passing game really going. I mean, you had Cousins last week throwing for 300 yards for the first time this year. He had thrown for more yards in the first half than he had in any game, entire game, coming up to that point. And then we only threw the ball, I think, 4 times in the second half. I mean, I understand Zimmer's philosophy of get ahead and then drain the clock. And in most cases, I agree with it. But when you got a quarterback who's going good and has had issues with his confidence beforehand, I would want to keep feeding him and keep getting him confident.
Okay.
So that's what I would do this week.
Take a break. Take a breath. I wanted to keep this podcast well below the 40 minutes that we did last time, and we're at 30 minutes. So let's spend the last 5 minutes just crying. Are you happy with the first quarter of this season?
Happy? No.
Concerned?
Not really concerned either. I just think that there have been opportunities that have been wasted. And you can never really be happy with that. We should have beat Green Bay in Green Bay.
That would have been huge.
4-1 right now.
That would have been huge.
We'd be head and shoulders above everybody in the division. So, no, I'm not happy. I expected us to lose against Chicago. When we looked forward to the first part of the season, I said that I thought they would be 3-1 after the first quarter. So I didn't expect them to beat Chicago, but they really should have beat Green Bay. But we've beaten the teams that we need to beat. The bad teams on our schedule thus far, we have dominated them. And now we just have to start beating the good teams that we're going to start to play.
Well, I said that we're going to be 10-6 because we're going to win out at home, and we're going to find a way to win 2 away games. We found a way to win 1 against the Giants, and it's probably going to be against maybe the Chargers, and then we're 10-6, and that's going to get us into the playoffs somehow, some way, and then we have a chance. In this last 3 minutes or so, so we're into the second quarter. We're 1-0 in the second quarter. Give me your prediction for the second quarter.
I think they win a close game tomorrow against the Eagles, probably something like 24-20. Moving on to Detroit. Detroit is much improved.
Much improved.
They're better than I thought they would be.
Me too.
But I still think we can go into Detroit and find a way to win that game. After that, we have the short week against the raging dumpster fire that is the Washington Redskins. I would be horrified if we don't win that game.
That would be
and
horrible.
Then I believe after that, isn't it Kansas City after that?
I believe so. Kansas City, and then there's a Dallas in there somewhere away. They're both away games, so it's going to be tough. But so this second quarter, I think we're going to win out. And now we're whatever the record is. If we win out, what is it?
Be 6-2.
Yeah, 6-2 and
5-3.
Yeah.
So right on that pace that you were talking about of 10-6. I actually had them 11-5 going into the season. I had them winning out at home and beating the Giants, the Lions, and the Chargers on the road.
Okay.
That's what I had.
Okay, that's close to what I had.
But that was when I thought the Lions weren't going to be that great. So I think you have to win tomorrow. You have to defend your home field. You have to beat a good team in Philadelphia. I could excuse losing to the Lions, but it really would be a crusher going 0-3 in your first trip through the division. So I'd want to get a win out of that, and I think Detroit is the best opportunity. And then, get well on the Redskins, because the Redskins are awful.
Yeah, they're all 0-5 or whatever. So, well, let's wrap this up. I'm feeling pretty good about our team. Tomorrow is going to be a must win, because if we don't, our team morale is going to be really low. I'm not going to feel too good about myself, and so tomorrow's game is going to be huge. But if they win, great momentum, and get by October, and then November and December is when the champions are made. So we'll have a lot to look forward to. Any final thoughts on anything?
Just get Kirk right.
Yeah.
As much as possible. You got everything else set up. The defense is looking good. The running game is looking fantastic. You got to get Kirk in that passing game humming somehow. They're too good not to be. That's all that the Vikings are missing. But if the Vikings continue to be missing that, they're going to continue to be a 9-7, 8-8 operation, and that's not going to be good enough to get them into the playoffs.
That's not good enough to keep jobs too. If they're 8-8, 9-7, I think the Wolves will be looking at maybe making some changes. I think, but who knows? Let's do this again. The end of the second quarter. We'll have a lot to talk about then.
KC.
What's that?
After KC.
After KC, and we'll see where we're at. Hopefully, we'll be talking positively about this year and looking forward to a playoff berth. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time. I'll say a prayer for your dad. Let's end this podcast with a skull chant. I'm going to put on my skull chant. You have a great day. Thank you.